How's it guys, welcome back to Project Drive. Today we are reviewing a South African favorite. So this is obviously not the Polo Vivo, but it is the Polo TSI, so it's a few notches up, and this is also the Highline, and it's got features such as cruise control, manual cruise control, which is pretty interesting, so I'll be letting you know how all that works. And we've even got the optional I think these are 17 or 18 inch alloy wheels here, so we'll be talking about all of that, what that means for the driving experience. But just starting off here at the front, we've got standard halogen beams. I'm going to quickly give you maybe a better look at them. So very standard Volkswagen stuff. Obviously your fog lights at the bottom, your radiator there, and then obviously the air for your airbox. Alright, so now coming to the engine of the Polo TSI, this is the 1.2 model, so it's got the 81 kilowatts or about 109 horsepower. So we've got this massive airbox that goes all the way into the turbo housing. We've got quite a small turbo that spins up relatively quickly, which is obviously nice for the driving experience. It's a dual overhead cam 1.2 inline 4, but I'll be talking a bit more about that in the spec sheet review. It's all pretty Volkswagen basics in here. Everything is very easily accessible, and yeah, it presents nicely to the hands. Now coming around to the side of the car, as you can see, if I'm not blocking too much with my shadow, we've got the 17 inch alloy wheels, which are optional. They look quite a lot better, I think, than the standard edition. Coming to the side here, you've got your standard inbuilt LEDs for the indicators in your mirror, which also fold in manually, although these are electrically operated when you're inside of the car. Coming around the side, we can obviously see that this is a 4-door. I'll be getting into the back seat a bit later, but obviously coming around to the boot, it's the standard Volkswagen release. You can see we've got your standard boot lid, deck cover, and this really like builder's kind of grey blanket type vibe material. I really wouldn't know what to call it but you have got a very standard little light here, and you've got some hooks for your all your bits and bobs you might have bought grocery shopping and stuff like that. And you've got about 280 liters of space and quite a narrow lip, but so it's not going to be such a pain to grab your things in and out of the car. It's fairly simple, and obviously there's a 60-40 split here if you wanted to fold down the chairs, and then you have a boot capacity of around, I think, 900 liters, so it obviously expands it very greatly, but I'll check that in the spec review now. One thing you do still get in this 2017 model is a full-sized spare wheel and spare wheel kit that all comes nicely wrapped up in there. So it's not a biscuit tie, it's a full-size spare, which is actually fantastic. So now we enter the back seat of the Polo TSI, and as you can see, it's very standard cloth interior Volkswagen in here. If I'm sitting right behind myself, I've got pretty good leg room. I think even if someone at around 6 foot was in front of me right now, I still would have plenty of space. You've obviously got your little stowage pocket here. You've got a few door bins. They wouldn't really fit much besides a few pieces of paper and chocolate bar wrappers. This is your armrest, which I'll be explaining is quite useless in the manual scheme of things because of the handbrake, but we'll get to that in the front interior review. Everything back here is quite nice and standard, and you've of course got rear electric windows, which are really nice. You've got some manually adjustable headrests, which are really nice. You get a full 3-way seat belts for even the middle seat here. Right, now getting into the front, you can see this is very 2017 Volkswagen. However, you do, from my hands feel anyway, get a real leather steering wheel with all your necessary buttons. No stupid touch buttons. We are in the era of functionality over form, which is great. You do have 2 analog gauges here. My mate's obviously put a few stickers on them. This is his car. And you've got your digital screen in the middle, which I will have to say looks quite dated by today's standards, but it is very functional and it all works quite well together. If we look here, it's obviously physical buttons flanking the infotainment system. The infotainment's quite nice and big. I would say this is probably about a 7-inch display. I haven't checked the exact specs on it, but it works very well. It connects seamlessly with a lot of devices. Plenty space in your door bins for things like your water bottle and a few other things behind it over there. You've got, as I said, your electrically adjustable mirrors right there. You've got your fog lights and lights switch over here. Talking about standard features, of course you have got air conditioning all across the TSI range, and even I think the Polo Vivo has air conditioning as standard. Some I/O you have got in the front here, you've got a standard 12-volt socket, you've got an aux in which has a little clip, it's quite nice, and then of course you've got a USB as well, so that's obviously really cool. Just talking about the general interior, as I said, it is standard Volkswagen cloth, so nothing to write home about, but you have got a leather style. I think it is pleather, so, or what is it, automotive leather as they call it for this, but it does feel quite nice. It is quite firm and it's quite short. We obviously have a nice 6-speed manual over here with a typical Volkswagen push to reverse. And something to also mention here, your microphones for your hands-free Bluetooth. Alright, so you now join me for the obligatory spec review. So this is of course the 2017 VW Polo TSI Highline with added options, which I've mentioned before, but we'll go through them again quickly. So from a mileage perspective, I don't think you'll be disappointed with 5.1 liters to the 100, especially with the high prices of fuel these days. It really is quite an economical car. That 1.2 turbo is very efficient, very German, very VW. You know, it does all what you expect it to do, and it's very easy to drive. So yeah, it does everything it basically sets out to do. The top speed claimed is 196 km an hour. So you've also got a 0 to 100 times of a respectable 9.3 seconds. I think you could maybe even get it a little bit better than that. To be fair, I have not tested it. As I said, it is a 1.2 inline 4 turbo, mated to a 6-speed manual. Of course, you can get this in an automatic option, which is very popular, but we have got the stick today. So now we also have a maximum power of 81 kilowatts. That is made at about 5,000 RPM. So you also get about 175 Newton meters of torque at about 1500 all the way to 4000 RPM. Because it is a turbo car, you basically feel the torque all the way through your RPM range, which is obviously very nice for daily driving. Your ground clearance is nothing to write home about, but it's not that bad. It's 143 millimeters, which is perfect for city and general driving. You're not going to be off-roading in this thing, I hope. The curb weight is also quite good, 1090 kilograms. Even with all the safety features that are in this car with the multiple airbags, you've got still 1090 kilograms, which shows you how well they structure their cars on their chassis and their various chassis architectures at VW. So the boot space is also, as I said, 280 to 952 liters, depending on how much you want to be through loading and how if you want to make the seats go flat or not. The fuel tank capacity is 45 liters, very standard for any car like this, like Polo Vivo, Ford. I'm not sure about the Ford Fiesta, but I know my own car is Ford Figo, also has about 45 liters. So anyway, without further ado, let's go for a drive and speak about exactly how this thing drives. Okay, so you obviously joined me for the drive. So talking of obligatory things, I forgot my sunglasses on sunny afternoon, so I do apologize for the glare or if I'm wincing, but it is because the sun is probably going to be somewhere near my face. So anyway, I'll do my best with what I've got. But just to talk about the drive and the first impressions, this car is very easy to drive, which is exactly what you want from something like this. I think you'll be quite happy. I saw a very comparable optioned one, except it didn't have cruise control, all the nice 17-inch wheels, for about 140,000 somewhere in Pretoria, which is a really good deal for something like this. Even at 70,000 Ks, these things will go quite a bit more than that anyway. Obviously that was also a 6-speed manual option, so they're quite well priced, I would say. There's no doubt about it, especially considering how much value you really get for these things. The interior, everything falls nicely to hand. It's quite a high quality interior. And the reason it's actually so easy to drive, I think, because Volkswagen have kind of nailed this platform, if that makes sense. You know, they've been doing this generation of Polo for so long now, of essentially the same architecture. I think it's the 4th or 5th gen, moving on to the 6th gen now these days, but it's all essentially the same thing really, if you're talking about 4th or 5th gen. And it's I don't know, it just tends to work. You got a nice long progressive clutch like you have in all the Polos of this kind of generation. You've got a really responsive engine, just doing a quick pull like that. Plenty of torque, which makes you feel like you're actually going a lot faster than you really are, which is convenient considering we are in the suburbs, and I absolutely do not want to make a scene of myself. But yeah, the 6-speed transmission is typical Volkswagen, very easy to use, absolutely no complaints from the standpoint of just pure drivability. It would be nice if it had a bit more tactility. I think that's the main complaint with these transmissions. You know, they are almost so easy that you don't really feel that involved, but yes, they're perfectly fine for most people. And I think this is just me complaining about semantics, because there's really not much to tell with this car. It's a very good daily driver. I mean, what else do I have to say about it? The steering is nice, communicative. As I said, it is a hydraulic steering unit still, which is very nice. The brakes are really nice and progressive, which is obviously something you definitely want in your daily driver. You know, you're not driving a race car, which is so it's convenient that they've thought about all of these things. You know, the one thing I will say about the drivability, which is quite an odd one, especially in a small hatchback like this, is that even though you've got all this power and you know you've got all this easy drivability and everything makes sense, except I think the 215 wheels, the 215 section wheels on a small car, because it makes maneuvering in parking lots or just maneuvering, you know, out of tough spaces more difficult than I think it actually needs to be. You know, in a car that's even just got 185 or 175 section wheels, you've got a lot more maneuverability. So that's one thing I would have to dock. I don't think it really needs 215 section wheels. It's not a hot hatch. You could drive it like a hot hatch. Although the suspension is very compliant, that's also one thing that's very nice about this car. You absolutely, it's got plenty of body control. So going around corners at a good rate of speed is no problem. You'll feel really centered and planted. The seats hold you in really nicely, these cloth seats, which are fairly breathable, but don't expect anything too crazy. And of course they're not cooled or heated, so that's also something you're gonna have to think about. I suppose if you were looking for those things as an option, I don't even think they do come as an option in this car, but if you wanted those things, I'm afraid you're gonna have to say, well, just look for something else. So yeah, listen, I think that as a prospect for someone who's had cars for a long time, doesn't mind driving a manual, because obviously if you get the automatic, it drives the price up quite substantially. You will ultimately be very happy that it's not going to, and by the way, the clutch as well as it's progressive, it's also very light. So none of the, you know, the trouble of being in traffic is really going to stress you out too much, I don't think, even if you do choose to go for the manual. Now, speaking of the manual, and I'm jumping around here a lot, but there's actually a lot more to talk about than I let on. So you've got a cruise control that works very simply. The buttons are here, but all it does is it regulates the speed, so you obviously have to shift it yourself, which is absolutely no problem. It's got a little shift indicator there and everything, so it'll tell you exactly what to do. It's just a little bit odd if you're not used to that, if you're used to automatic cruise control, but it does work fine. But obviously you will have to do the braking yourself. I guess if you were looking for a proposition of a car that was a really good daily driver, you can have some fun in it for sure. You know, getting off the line, you can really belt it. There's hardly any turbo lag, and of course 215 section tires, which is, I find quite ridiculous. But I do think those 215 section tires, if I haven't mentioned it, are exclusive to the rim upgrade that I showed you in the beginning. So I guess if you don't want them, you don't have to have them. And in fact, that spare wheel is a 185 section as well, so it's not a full 215. And I think if it was a full 215, you'd get a bit less boot space. So yeah, I think as a total package for someone who wants a good daily driver, someone who maybe wants to have a bit of fun in something, a safe car, a reliable car, and of course you got the Volkswagen badge tacked on behind it, which is obviously a great thing for resale and brand recognition. You know, in South Africa we absolutely love our Volkswagens. The most popular car that we currently have on the market is in fact, of course, Volkswagen Polo Vivo. So you know, it's a South African classic at this point. You know, the Polos and the Golfs and everything. And you know what, there's a reason for that. They're simple, efficient, good value cars, and they continue to be that way. I mean, they still sell, even though people are complaining so much about the new generations being ugly or not having as great of an exhaust note. You know, they sell and they sell for a reason, because they are all of those things. So I hope that made some sense to you and it helped you make an informed buying decision. I'm gonna write off now and say cheers, and yeah, if you like what I'm doing here, please hit subscribe. I'm trying to churn out new videos as soon as I can, but obviously, you know, I can't do it all the time, just because I'm studying, but I try to do it as often as possible, and sometimes I even get something pretty cool. So anyway, thanks guys, and yeah, by the way, I passed 80 subscribers the other day, which I thought was something else. I never even expected this to get that big from how many videos I've done, but I have to thank you guys so much for subscribing to me, and yeah, I'll check you for the next one.